Hello and welcome to the PetiteKnits podcast. I'm Catherine, and I live in Vancouver, Canada. This is my monthly knitting podcast where I chat about all the knitting I've done in the past month. And since we're, moving into December, or it'll be December when this airs, I'll chat about all my November knits. So my works in progress, my finished objects, and my plans, especially the Christmas plans. I find those are the best kind of knitting plans because you're almost guaranteed a bit of a break where you have a couple days there where you can just unwind and focus on knitting. But before I get into this month, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you so much. So this past month, I actually became monetized on YouTube, which means I joined the YouTube partner program. For those of you that don't know, that means that now I can get a portion of the ad revenue. I think it's like 45%, 40% of all the ads that are played. So before, you would have been watching ads, but I wouldn't have gotten any of the proceeds. Whereas now, when you watch an ad, I actually get a small percentage of that. And to be admitted into the program, you need 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours. And my last 2 podcast episodes are what pushed me over that watch hour limit. So thanks so much. I'm so excited. I think it's about a week ago that I started being able to kind of see the slow trickle of ad revenue. I'm planning on doing a video on monetization on YouTube. That'll hopefully come out this month, but we'll see. So if you want to learn a little bit more about it, the ad revenue is a lot smaller than I was expecting, but it makes sense. Like, it can be anywhere, I think. Well, I'll talk about it in the actual episodes that those that are here for the knitting will get to hear about the knitting. So yes, thanks so much. And in that little montage, I was wearing all the sweaters that I've knitted by date of when I completed them. So that first sweater, you might recognize it as the sweater that I'm currently wearing. And this sweater has never been on the podcast. And it is the Farm Twist sweater by Joji. And it is knit in Madeline Tosh Farm Twist. So it's, the Farm Twist jacket, and I knit it in the Farm Twist yarn, which is the yarn that she recommends. So this was my first sweater, which you might be looking at it and be like, what an interesting choice. And I totally agree. I don't know why I decided that an all-over cable work sweater would be my first ever adult side sweater. I also knit this to gift to my mom. So my first sweater was a gift. I'm borrowing it right now so that I can film. It is a top-down sweater. It's actually a drop shoulder sweater. So you start at the neck, and it's knit back and forth, but you knit back and forth, and these cables, there's a cable that runs right from when you cast on all the way down, and it continues all the way down the sleeve, which is a really nice detail. So you cast on, and then you're doing this cable, and then on either side of the cable you're increasing, and that's to do the front and the back panel. And then eventually you put those cable stitches on hold, and then you start knitting down for the front, down for the back, and then you join in the round and you knit all the way down, and then you pick up for those drops, for that drop shoulder, and you knit the sleeves down. This yarn has a bit of a fun story. So I just had started getting into knitting, and for some reason I was like on the Madeline Tosh website, and I noticed that they were having 40% off, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's such a sweet deal. And the reason why is they were getting acquired by Jimmy Bean's yarn, and when that happened, I guess they decided to have this massive sale. So it was 40% off, and I decided to get 2 sweater quantities of yarn. My mom told me that she loves green, would love a green sweater, so I picked this green sweater. Although, she was allowed to choose the yarn, I picked the pattern, so it was all my fault for picking this pattern. And then the other yarn I got was this purple. So this is Cactus green, and this is Penumbra, I think it's called, and this is Madeline Tosh light. So this is their fingering weight yarn. and they're both merino. This is a DK weight yarn. This is a fingering. So I got my first 2 sweater quantities worth of yarn through that sale, which was very exciting for me. And yeah, so it was top down, and as you can see, there's kind of 3 different cable motifs. There's like the main cable, then there's actually 2 different vines. And when I did my swatching, that was like my biggest struggle with the sweater, is I didn't know what the swatch was supposed to be in, like if it was supposed to be in the cables or in like stockinette. I ended up doing it in the cables, and I couldn't figure it out what was wrong. So I kind of I thought I was a bit small, so I went between 2 sizes. I ended up doing the medium for the width and then the small for any of the length measurements, which I've done before for other sweaters, just because I do find I am a bit of a tight sweater knitter. And since this is for my mom, luckily my mom and I are almost identical sizes, and since it was top down, I was able to try it on as I went. I really wanted to do the medium for the body because I found the small and then the size above it, the large, they had a panel kind of below the armpit that had stockinette. And a lot of sweater patterns, you'll notice this, that because the designer has so many sizes, they will add like a stockinette panel so that they can, because cables are, any cable design is like a fixed number of stitches, so the stockinette allows them to kind of play a bit more with different sizes. So I wanted to go with the medium just because it really greatly reduced the amount of stockinette that I'd have to have, and I wanted all over cables for my first pattern. I'm not super happy with the fit of this sweater. There's no short row shaping. It's just, as I said, you're kind of doing equal increases along the shoulder, and then you knit. I think both my mom and I have fairly square, broad shoulders, so it just doesn't hang the way that I was hoping to. And the sleeves, this would be forbearing of things to come. Look how short they are. And this is after I actually knit them once, and then I lengthened the sleeves for my mom, and this is where we're at, which this just foreshadows all the sleeve problems that I still have. I still do this. I still knit my sleeves too short. I think because I'm just like so excited to be done. I'm just like, I want to be done now. I want to be done now. The other thing that I learned a bit about was hand-dyed wool. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of like variation in color in this yarn. This one, I would say less so. I mean, this one is actually, I don't know if I said, it's the balloon sweater by PetiteKnits. And with this one, I held a Mohair, which does really, holding that Mohair strand does really kind of mute the color, and kind of, because it's a solid color, it just kind of plays down the hand-dyed aspect. So this sweater, I don't mind the kind of light gradation in color, whereas this sweater, I find it just a little, it's just a bit much, in my opinion. No, I don't really love this yarn. There also was quite a variance between the skeins, so I ended up knitting with one skein, and then I don't know why, but I ended up like grabbing all the skeins and just kind of looking at them together, and that's when I realized that there was quite a bit of difference in colors between the skeins. So this top skein is actually quite a bit more like browny green, and then as I looked at some of the other ones, they had quite a bit more like bright green. Like you can really see here, this one skein I started with when I did the arm is just so much brighter than this skein here. So since this was knit back and forth, I ended up doing something where you hold 3 balls. So you have, the 2 balls on either side, and then you're kind of knitting with one across, and then you swap out, and then you'd be purling back with the other one, and then you swap out and you'd be knitting. So you have these 3 balls going just to really more even out the color, just so it wouldn't quite look quite as blocky. And from that perspective, I think it was a success. Like, I do think that you can't tell that there was a lot of variation in these skeins. So I'm very happy about that. But still, I think there's just a little too much depth to be really my style preference. All the edges are tubular, so I got to have, that was my first time doing tubular as well. And I remember doing the bottom of the sweater in tubular. It took hours. But it was well worth it. I always think tubular is well worth the time spent. Speaking of hours though, I did time myself, I think when I was doing one row in the body, and it took 20 minutes, which means that like each inch took multiple hours. So this was really a labor of love. And since then I haven't done an all over cable sweater, but I do want to knit another one. I think I would be a lot more careful with kind of looking at how it fits and kind of, well, I mean, now that I've learned so much about, you know, what styles do I actually wear, and then finding something that's kind of similar to that. I did find Hohi's pattern was really clear, really well written, especially for an all over cable sweater. She did an amazing job. There was charts and there was fully written instructions. So it was very enjoyable. I would totally do another one of her patterns. I would just maybe be a bit more careful with, you know, based on my body type and what I like to wear, what pattern I would choose. And same with the Madeline Tosh yarn. I was very happy with the balloon sweater, just not as happy with this farm twist. So yeah, this was my first ever adult sweater. This was kind of when I took the full dive in, and I haven't looked back. And maybe I will wear this Christmas season. It seems like a very good Christmas sweater. I mean, I should return it back to my mom, but I'm sure she wouldn't mind if I wore it for Christmas. So now let's get back into the November progress. And one thing that I am quite excited about that you would probably remember from last time if you watched last time, and that is the Seli Cardigan by, oops, I'm losing yarn here, by Alex Bird. Oh my goodness. There is a lot of balls. Here we go. Oops. I just want to make sure my mic is not ruining the sound. I actually filmed, this is my second time filming, because the first time my mic kept falling. So hopefully this is, second time is the charm. So the Seli Cardigan, it is a top-down raglan, and it's got this beautiful design on the sleeves. So Alex Bird, if you don't know, she does knitwear that has traditional Estonia elements to it. So this, I believe, is, oh gosh, I should look this up. It's like roomsy, something like that. And what you're doing is you're floating the yarn on the front to get this gorgeous pattern. So her pattern, the Seli Cardigan, has the two details on either side. And like I said, it's a top-down raglan, and it will eventually be a cardigan, but unlike this sweater, it is steeked so that you can continuously knit in the round, which I greatly prefer. If I were to redo this sweater, I 100% would steek it, just to avoid all that purling. Purling, it's just time-consuming and a little bit harder. For some reason with knitting, I can really get into a groove. I'm quite excited because the body of the sweater is just straight stockinette. And I would like, I think that would be really helpful for me right now. This, I think since I think when I showed it last, I was kind of here. And so now I've done that much progress. And that was probably within a week or 2 weeks. So I was very happy with the amount of progress that I made. I find with top-down sweaters, you know, you're really knitting to the width of the shoulder, which is the widest part. It's the most number of stitches you'll ever have on your needle. So that the very beginning seems to just go the slowest. So I'm quite happy with how much progress I'm making considering how many stitches are on my needle. And I'm quite excited because, so this is how much yarn I have left of the main color, and before the skein was like massive. So I think I've maybe used up 60%, at least 50% of the skein, which also there's 3 of these actually. So that makes me, I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm like kind of like maybe a 1/6 of the way, maybe a little more done the sweater. The cool thing about this design with the raglan is all the raglans I've done before have been, you know, knit a row, increase a row, knit a row, increase a row. Whereas this one, you actually knit a row, and then you still do an increase every other row, but you don't always do an even number of increases. So there's more increases on the body than there are on the shoulders, so that you have more of like an arc, which is when you look at machine knit or like store-bought Raglan sweaters, they typically do have more of like an arc rather than like a straight diagonal. So I think that is very exciting and super cool, and I'm excited to see if I get a better fit than with my other Raglans that I've done in the past. Like I did the Cozy Classic Raglan, which you would have seen in that montage. And so the one thing though is that the depth of her Raglan is quite deep, which I noticed from the model. So I am gonna stop the Raglan earlier. I grabbed a Raglan sweater that I bought that I absolutely love the fit of, and it's kind of got a similar amount of ease as this cardigan. And I've been just kind of lining up my sweater, and my plan is to do the same depth as this store-bought sweater, and then I will just kind of cast on the remaining stitches that I need for the body and the underarm. I've never done this before. It's kind of a new modification. If you've done this before, please let me know your thoughts, or if you think that there's a better way that I can do this, that would be awesome. Just because I want to shorten the depth of the Raglan. I realized I didn't talk about the yarn at all. So this yarn has actually got a bit of an interesting story. So the main color of this is this beautiful, gorgeous, it's an undyed, it's 3 different sheeps. It's Shetland with a bit of BFL, and it's actually from the Lower Mainland, from Forge and Fiber, or Fiber and Forge, sorry, which is I think about a 2-hour drive from me. They have a beautiful, I think it's what I would call like a hobby farm. So I think that I don't know if this is right, but I think that they might be retired, and then they're kind of doing this, getting into farming for fun, and also, you know, hopefully make some money at it. But I absolutely loved their yarns. They did a pop-up at the yarn store that I used to work at, Urban Yarns, and I fell in love, and I had to get some. So I ended up getting this gorgeous yarn. And then for the color accents, roll away yarn, that's okay. It's all fingering weight yarn, by the way. And these, I believe, are 2.7, they're 2.5, US 2.5 needles, which I can't remember the millimeters on that. I want to say it's 3 or something like that, 3 millimeters, so pretty tiny needle. And then for the accent colors, I used this fingering weight yarn, which is 100% fine Highland wool, I believe. So just like the Shetland and I think BFL, they're from England or the UK, I should say. I'm not entirely sure. The Shetland wool is a bit more weak, and then the BFL would add strength to the yarn. It is, I would say it's pretty darn soft. You know, it's definitely scratchier than something like a Merino. Feels just a little more like toothy, but not uncomfortable, and a lot softer than I was anticipating. This is very soft yarn. So this is like, I would say just as soft as a Merino. This is single ply, and this is from, oh my gosh. I can see the label, I didn't bring it over. I don't think I'm gonna remember. It is a very popular yarn. They have a sweater yarn and a wool stock. I think this is Wool Stock Light, actually, is the name of the yarn. As always, though, I have everything linked below, especially when my brain gives out on me. I absolutely love the colors that they have. This yarn has got quite a bit of a halo, which I don't really love. I think for this technique that I'm doing, it would have been better to have a non-haloed yarn, just because it would make the design a little more sharp and clear, whereas this has got such a big halo, also being single plied. I think it just might have been a mismatch, but I do love the softness, I love the color, and I think I would use this yarn, and maybe I'll have enough left over that I can, you know, try something different, maybe like some mitts or something. The colors are nice because they have a little bit of extra depth to them. I'll try zooming in a little bit, actually, we'll see how that goes. But this purple one has a little bit of blue brought into it, and then this yellowy one has a little bit of gray, and they kind of just have these hints of colors, which really just, when the light hits it, kind of gives it some little razzle-dazzle, a little something a little special. So yeah, if I were to do this sweater again, I probably would choose a yarn that was a little less halo. So that's what I'd recommend if you're thinking about doing anything with this technique. I would pick a yarn that's less haloed. I think last time I was like, oh, this technique would be great for those that wanted to get into color work. I now completely take that back. I think if you're looking for an introduction to color work, go with stranded color work, because I'm struggling with a couple of things. One is the tension. So if you might notice, like I can actually slip my finger underneath this, and I ended up looking at hers and noticed that she did a lot tighter. So I tried to transition to doing it quite a bit tighter, which I think you can see it gets a little bit neater, but it's still, I would say, too loose. And my plan is, once I've finished the yoke, I'm going to go back with a darning needle and just like row by row fix it and tighten it. I will block it first though, just to let all the yarn relax, and then I'm gonna, manually go through and tighten it all up. I am planning on cutting all these yarns once I finish the yoke, because I'm gonna focus on the body, which is just stockinette with the main color, and I don't want to have to deal with all these balls flying around. And that is the second reason why I don't recommend this Room C for first time color work, is because of the amount of yarn. So this is, when you're doing this technique, you're holding this fingering weight yarn double, which means that for each ball, I'm grabbing from both the inside and the outside. And since these are so far apart, I have decided to use separate yarn balls, which makes sense rather than carrying the yarn around and around. And she has a special way that you do the technique when you're kind of knitting flat, which gives you this very clean back, and I'll link to that video on the website. It's quite, that technique is quite cool. So it's a little bit of a mess. It's a yarn mess. I would, I'm embarrassed. I mean, maybe I can show how bad it looks at the moment, but it's just like, it's chaos. It's chaos. Sometimes you just kind of got to let it, you just shove it into your project bag and just don't really look into it unless you absolutely have to. So that part has made this a little bit less enjoyable, but I am very happy with how it looks and the progress so far. The yarns are great, the pattern is great. Overall, I'd say it's a win. I'm curious, she does mention, don't be alarmed that the neckline is so large, it'll greatly reduce when you pick up stitches. So I am a little alarmed that the neckline is so big, but I trust her, and what I'll do is I definitely do love like a close neck. Like I love it. I love to, like, even with this t-shirt, I just love close necks. So I'll definitely be, making sure that I have a nice close neck with this. My plan though is to finish the yoke, probably block it, and then try it on, maybe knit a little bit underneath to kind of see if that modification that I was talking about, where I end the raglan early and then increase, just add stitches underneath the underarm. We'll probably do like a couple inches, block it, fix up the sleeves, kind of get it to a place that I'm pretty happy with. I won't be able to do the neckline until the entire body is done and steeked, which is too bad, because I would really love to do the neckline, just because I find when you do the neckline early, it really just makes the sweater look so much more polished and gets you a little more excited to work on it. But like I said, I kind of did this maybe like a week or two of knitting, and very, very happy with how it's turning out. So my next project, it's actually a finished object, and I think I promised last episode that I would not go into a yarn store in November, and I may have broken that promise. I may have started a project with some new yarn and finished part of it. I'll get into that. I found, for some reason, I'm in Vancouver, Canada, which is very close to the US border, so we're quite low down actually. And in November we have the time change happen, so now the sun's setting at like 4:20. It's brutal. And I just kind of lost my knitting mojo. The weather, it just turns to rain, and So honestly, I probably knit about 50% of what I normally knit in a month. That's how much I cut back. And I was just feeling extra blue one day, and I was like, you know what? I've always wanted to knit a Christmas advent calendar, and I decided that this year would be the year. So I'm not gonna be able to finish it, but here, let me do the great reveal. So after spending hours on Ravelry, flipping through page after page of options, I ended up landing on this cute one. So this is I've got it written down. It is the Mitten Garland Advent Calendar by Kathy Lewinsky. And thank you so much, Kathy. So this is actually a free Advent calendar. And what you do is you make 24 little mitts, and they're all over colorwork, and they're all the same size. And they've got Christmas trees and Rudolph and Santa and bells and snowflakes, and they're all gorgeous. So after many hours, I came across and I just decided that I had to do this. There's no way I'm gonna get this done. When this comes out, it'll be December 2nd, and I've gotten one and a bit of one done. So this is gonna be my goal for next year. If you've always wanted to do an advent calendar, you can look on my Ravelry and see what I've favorited. So I went through like many pages, like maybe 50 to 100 pages worth of holiday projects. And I liked a bunch of little sweaters and little toques, because originally I was thinking about possibly doing like a bunch of just little kind of hats and toques and stuff like that, and little sweaters, and kind of making my own. But then when I came across this, especially when it had the numbers on it, I knew that this was the pattern for me. So I went to the yarn store and I picked up a yarn that I've seen but I've never used, and that is the Holskarn Super Soft. And this is an 100% wool. I believe it's a Norwegian yarn. I'm not positive. I think the word garn sounds like yarn in Norwegian, but don't quote me on that. It's quite a thin fingering. So this is 50 grams for 287 meters, whereas typically when you have a fingering, it is around, I find like if I'm gonna do socks, I normally look for about 400, 415 per 100 grams. So this is almost like, what, 560, 570 meters per 100 grams. So it's significantly thinner. But I think with the, I used the recommended needle size, which is a US 1 or a 2.5 millimeter. And I think to me it looks like it's great. I haven't measured gauge. I honestly don't really care about gauge with this. I just more cared about how it looks. And I think it looks perfectly cute. As you can see, I do have some tassels to weave in. So I went to the yarn store and I picked up all of these cakes. So this is a super soft 100% wool. Let's see from the little thing. I think it's not machine washable, as expected, I would say. Oh shoot, I just realized I forgot to put my phone on airplane mode. I'm just gonna make sure I'm still filming. I actually did remember, so no need to panic. So I picked up 6 different colors. I find there was 2 different ways that people went when looking at other people's projects. They either went very beautiful, so they kind of picked like 3 colors, and then they have this very kind of aesthetically pleasing, gorgeous advent color. Like I saw some with like blue, white, and gray. Beautiful. I decided I'm gonna go for the quirky, eclectic, over-the-top advent calendar, which is why I got all these Christmas colors. I wanna do like the tree in green, I wanna do the bell and like the star in yellow, I wanna do Rudolph in brown, and then I want to decorate the gloves. So each glove I wanna on the Christmas tree, I wanna put little beads to make ornaments, and then Rudolph, I wanna maybe glue on like a little red pom-pom to be his nose. I decided I wanted these to be as over-the-top, Christmassy, fun, crazy mittens as I can. that's the vibe that I want to go for. So this first one is quite pretty. Like the red and the white is just, it's classic. I made a multitude of mistakes, but I don't think you can really tell as I knit this down. So these mitts actually follow a very similar pattern to the Tin Can Knits World's Most Simplest Mittens, which I knit not that long ago. So you cast on at the top, then you do this Latvian braid, which is very cool. I will link the tutorial that I found to do this because I tried to do this following the knitting instructions and I got lost and I had to just rip out and start again. So you do the Latvian braid, then you knit for a little bit, then you start doing increases for the thumb. The increases for the thumb are on every other round. Silly me, I did them on every round, then realized I was wrong, then did too many without increases, then I had to do multiple increases again, so that's why my thumb shape is a little wonky wonk. So you do them every other round, do the increases for the thumb to grow out the thumb, so it's like that. Then you put these stitches on hold, then you knit down, then you do decreases, and then you do a little Kitchener stitch across the top. And then for the thumb, you do the same thing. You just knit, decreases, Kitchener stitch across the top. And unfortunately, when I was doing my floats for the thumb, I just kind of messed up. So you can't really, it's because the floats were too short, it just glued the two sides together. So you can't wear them, which is something I want to fix for the next one. I want a little hand to be able to go in and actually wear the mini glove. The mini glove. I remember when I was a kid, I used to put the Christmas stockings on my feet and like run around with them. So I was kind of hoping that like a kid would be able to put these on their hands and have fun and run around in it. The yarn, beautiful colors. It says it's super soft. Not super soft. I would say this is almost like a Shetland, maybe even scratchier. Like this is the Shetland wool here. I was talking to a friend and they said that it softens up with washing. So I've washed this once. It's definitely less rough than this one, but still not great. Still not super soft. So I'll be maybe washing all the gloves like maybe 2 or 3 times and maybe doing a little bit of, it is non-superwash. I mean, it's 100% wool and it doesn't say that you can wash it. So I imagine that it will felt. So I want to be careful with these to take it easy. So this probably took me about a week worth of work. So I'm imagining that if I do around 2 every month, I should be ready for Christmas. Of course, I'll get distracted and then I'll end up doing less or yeah, we'll see. The goal is to do 2 per month. And I have started the second pair over here. So last year I was obsessed with knitting socks. I knit, I want to say 5 or 6 pairs of socks. This year I have not knit 1 pair of socks. And while I was in my sock obsession, I decided to get these flexi tips. So I've knit socks with DPNs in the round with like using magic loop and then small like 9-inch circulars. And this was kind of the last way that you can knit a small circumference item. And these are almost, I would say, a hybrid between in the round needle, because you've got that bendy cord in between, and DPNs, because you've got these 2 short little ends. I still prefer in the round to DPNs. I think if you like DPNs, this might make you happy. I found originally when I was knitting this that my tension was always wonky. So right now I'm actually in the middle of a round, which is why there's 3 needles. Typically though, you'll have 2 needles and then you'll use that 3rd one to kind of like knit down the other needle and then you free it up and then you knit down the other one. So typically I think with DPNs you use like 5 at once or 4. So you always have like, 3 or 4 actually on the garment and then you have that last one that you're like using as the extra one to kind of go around. So this one you only need 3, which is kind of nice, and I think that's because they do have that bend in them. I found though, like where the needle, the 2 needles were when I was transitioning between the 2 needles, I just couldn't quite get the tension right. So I don't know how obvious this is gonna be. Let me see if I can find the most obvious part. But just I think once I blocked this, it honestly did fix it quite a bit. But I found all the stitches that were right on the edge tended to be quite a bit larger. So they're quite a bit larger in the color work. I don't know if you can really see that. Honestly, it got a lot better after I blocked it and kind of just like pulled it. So what I did is I joined a new Facebook group, and I think it's called the Stranded Color Knitting Facebook group. I will post it below. If you are at all interested in stranded color work, Fair Isle, anything like that, join this group. It is insane what people are knitting for fun. So I think it was the other day, there was a blanket. It was made up of hexagons, and each hexagon was unique, and each hexagon was like probably fingering weight all over color work. Like, wow. The projects are wow. And anyway, so on this group, they were giving some hints. They also help each other out. And they mentioned that what they like to do when they're dealing with DPNs is they'll actually move the 3 stitches on the old needle onto the one that you're about to knit with. And that way, you're always kind of shifting your stitches, so your work is slowly moving. So your beginning of round does not begin with the needle. It actually will slowly rotate, and then you won't have any issues with tension. And I've had absolutely, like, this is way better. Like, to me, you can't tell at all about, like, there is no issues. And as you can see, this is number 2. I've decided that I'm gonna go in order. They kind of get a little more fun closer to Christmas, which is the classic thing. Like, as you get closer to Christmas, that's when you get the like Santa one and the tree one and the, with advent calendars. So I'm starting with the more kind of basic ones, and then I'll get to the more Christmassy ones. So overall, I think if you like DPNs, then I recommend giving these Addies a try, Addie Clicks. If you aren't a fan of DPNs, then you probably won't be a fan of the Addie Clicks. You probably should just stick to in the round. I probably will use the Addie Clicks for a bit, and then I'll try my little 9-inch circulars. I bought the Addie Clicks, so they deserve to be used. And I kind of you got to give them a little bit more of a shot. I find if you're trying something new, you kind of need to really spend, I think someone's back. 1 second. My husband just came home, so I just waited for him to settle, just because the noise can, we live in a small apartment and we both work from home, so the noise can kind of overwhelm. So yeah, this is kind of my pick-me-up Christmas project. Like I said, if you're interested in knitting any Advent stuff, definitely check out my Ravelry to see. Or if you want to join, if you also feel like making this, maybe we can make it together. Maybe I'll set up like some sort of Ravelry group or something like that. If you're interested, please let me know. Let me know too if you have any Advent calendars or Christmas patterns that you like to do, as I would like to celebrate Christmas this year with some knitting. I've always wanted to, but this is the first year I found something that I kind of I liked. Yeah. So speaking of all over cable sweaters, so if you were following me last time, you would know that I was choosing to knit the Aurelia pullover by Sari Norland. And this was knit in this yarn, which I picked up at Rhinebeck. This is Green Mountain Spinnery, and it is their ragtime. It is a very thick DK, and it's 100% American wool. It's actually 2 different colors kind of spun together. And I was originally gonna knit this all over cabled sweater, but after realizing that I had done this before, where I've knit an all over color cabled sweater and it took forever, and since I just don't really love the color of this yarn, I decided, what am I thinking? I'm gonna spend like, I don't know, 200 hours knitting a sweater that I am not super excited about. Like, I don't think that's a good idea. So I've decided to scrap this project. I actually gave up on it, and instead I found a new project that I'm gonna do, and that is the Flax Sweater by Tin Can Knits. And I'm gonna do if you don't wanna wear the sweater yarn, what do? You give it to someone. So I'm gonna make kid sweaters with it. It's my plan. I was gonna start with the 1 to 2 year old size, and that will require about 1 skein of wool. And I think with this color, it's so a lot that I think a kid sweater will be good, just because you'll have just like a little bit of it rather than like a whole adult sweater worth. So that's my plan. I'm gonna make maybe, I don't know how many kid sweaters. I've got 5 skeins of this yarn. I went nuts, so I'll probably make maybe 5 sweaters, or maybe 3 sweaters, because maybe I'll make them in different sizes. But I do think the nice thing about this yarn is it will be very warm. And since the color itself is a little kind of muddy, it might be like a good camping sweater where it doesn't really matter if they get a hole in it or they destroy it, because the yarn is definitely stronger. It's definitely a little more robust. It's warm. And yeah, so that's my new plan with this yarn. I just wanted to give you an update in case you were holding out on that sweater. I would absolutely, that is my favorite cabled sweater that I've found. So I think I would knit it, but I would do it in more of like a softer, kind of more pretty yarn that really highlights all those cables, whereas this is already kind of a multicolored yarn. So you lose those cables with this yarn, and it's just not a color. Like, I think that pattern really lends itself to being almost a little bit fancy. So I think I want to choose a color and a texture that kind of give me that just a little bit of a fancy kind of vibe, whereas this to me is more like camping, which I absolutely love camping, and I know that I will continue to camp, so I'm gonna make more camping sweaters in that yarn. Sometimes you can't, like, I bought that yarn and I was like, oh man, I wasn't really excited about it, and then I was trying to force myself to knit something with it, but now I'm much more happy with this decision. It wasn't meant to be. It's very common to get overwhelmed at festivals. It's hard stuff. So that is no longer happening. This is what the swatch looks like if you're curious about the yarn. This yarn was used in the Flower Press cardigan, or Flower Press pullover, as the contrast color, as like an alternate to Spin Cycle. The color that I got is quite monochromatic, whereas the other colors do have a little more shifting going on. And now, last but not least, I was going to talk about my Christmas knit. So I find Christmas is always like a bit of time where I dedicate to trying something new. I typically have, a few days off, guilt-free, where I can knit and just focus. And this year, I want to knit the Marie Wallin Unst Sweater as my Christmas cast on. And these are all the colors that are in it. So it's knit with the Jameson Shetland Spindrift. And I think there's 8 or 10 or 11 colors in this sweater. And I'm going with the colors that she recommends, just because I find it's quite hard to pick those colors, actually. It's 100% Shetland wool. It's about a sport weight. These are little 25-gram packs. And the reason why they're so small is because you use so many different colors in them. I think that the pack I got is like 25 balls. So I'm planning on doing all the math to convert it into a in the round steek sweater, and then I'm going to post in that Facebook group that I was talking about, just to get someone who has experience to just let me know if I'm on the right track, because that sweater is going to be like it's very much a dream sweater of mine, but it's also like something that makes me a little bit uncomfortable because of how difficult it is. So it's like pushing my comfort level. So I'd really love if I could make sure that I'm doing it right from the beginning, so that I can knit it and then enjoy it, and not have to, if I have to rip out large portions of that, I might cry, just because it'd be heartbreaking. So I want to avoid that as much as possible. So I'm planning on kind of doing my swatch and possibly casting on, dare I say it. I would absolutely love if you kind of do something similar, or if, please share any of your projects that you're planning on doing for Christmas. I'm always interested in new projects. I can never get enough. So yeah, hope everyone has a great holidays and Christmas, and then I'll see you in the new year, which is crazy, 2024. All the best. Bye.